Welcome in. I'm Tyler Noe. He's Lance Barton. This is Always Talking Ball. We are going to give you our Week 5 best bets at the end of the show tonight. We're going to put some teams on upset alert, and we're going to talk about a grand total of 14 games on this insane slate of Week 5 college football. Obviously, you know where we're going to start off with. We're going to start off with the showdown in T-Town. We could probably talk for an hour about this game, but let's just start. Let's just see how it goes. It's time for ATB Big Game Breakdowns, brought to you by Home Field Apparel. Fall is here, and it's the perfect time to gear up with the vintage college apparel from Home Field. Whether you're tailgating or just staying warm, Home Field has you covered. And as a listener of this podcast, you can get 15% off your purchase with promo code ATB15. So grab your fall essentials at Home Field Apparel. Show off your school pride. Type in ATB15 at checkout for 15% off. Lance, you've been dying to talk about this one for a long time. It's the Dogs and the Tide, 7:30, ABC, Alabama coming in. The last time Alabama was a home dog, November 3rd, 2007, when they were 6.5-point dogs to Matt Flynn and Louisiana State University. Pate brought up a good point. That was the year that their number one wide receiver was born, 2007. So this one is it's a 2-point spread right now, and so it could really go either way. And gosh, everybody's looking forward to this one.
Yeah, man, I'm going to start off by saying, just like I did last year before the SEC championship game when we previewed that game, that if you are a fan of college football, I don't care how much you hate Alabama, I don't care how much you hate Georgia. I know there's a lot of people out there that hate these two teams just in general because they win. But if you're a fan of this sport, this is really just, man, this is as good as it gets, man. It just is. The athletes that will be on the field in this game going at each other with literally everything they've got. And this is the best our sport has to offer as far as just compiled a group of amount of talent on the field all at one time. This is as good as it gets, man. And this will not be for the faint of heart. This game will not. This will be one of those the women and the children probably don't need to see because this is going to be a hard-hitting, big-time football game played in Tuscaloosa Saturday night. And, Tyler, I think as far as matchups are concerned, I think we'll start here with the Alabama offense versus the Georgia defense. Things that have given the Nick Saban, Kirby Smart type of defenses trouble for a long time. Dual threat quarterbacks. If you go back into Saban years at Alabama fans will tell you the same. Dual threat quarterbacks, the ones that could truly throw and run equally well, gave them the most trouble. Now, I'm not saying Milroe necessarily can throw as good as he can run, but he throws good enough. Obviously, we saw that last year in the SEC championship game. He was good enough to beat Georgia in that game last year. That is still what's been plaguing Kirby Smart, even when his defense is at Georgia. The dual threat quarterbacks give him trouble. Now, I remember listening to him in interviews at the Regions Tradition Golf Tournament that was in Birmingham this summer talk about that one of the number one things that this staff worked on in the offseason was defending QB runs and trying to work on defending and like just game planning and stuff for dual threat quarterbacks. Because I think he knows it. It's been a problem. So the Alabama offense versus this Georgia defense. I just don't think that anybody can line up for 4 quarters and sustain drives consistently across 4 quarters against this Georgia defense. I just don't. There's a few defenses in college football I just don't think you can do that against. How you beat them is you have to hit shot plays. You have to hit explosive plays. And if you go back again, I think Alabama's 5-1 the last 6 games against Georgia or something against Kirby Smart. Since 2020 when they had Mac Jones, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, and that crew, in the last few games that they've played against Georgia, the thing that Alabama has done to beat them is they've hit shot plays, explosive plays. If you remember in the SEC championship game that year with Jamison Williams and John Mechie and Bryce Young, they weren't going up and down the field, running it down their throat or anything like that. They were hitting home runs against that Georgia defense. Obviously, Alabama so far has been a shot play offense. The number one thing that people are hating on Alabama right now about is that they aren't doing a good job of sustaining long drives, having those long types of drives. There are too many 3 and outs. They're feast or famine. Well, I actually think against Georgia, to beat them, that's what you have to do. You have to hit explosive plays against them. And now the flip side of this is the difference in the SEC championship game last year, the last time that these two teams played. What won Alabama that football game was not explosive plays. It wasn't Jalen Milroe playing hero ball or being some crazy dual threat quarterback that just dominated Georgia or anything like that. It wasn't that at all. It was Alabama on the line of scrimmage on the defensive line and the offensive line won that battle. No doubt about it. That was a difference in that game. And that's where this game will be won, is can Alabama's offensive line block good enough to give Jalen Milroe time to hit some of these shot plays? And can they don't have to run for 300 yards or 200 yards or whatever like that. They just need to be able to run good enough against this Georgia defense to make them respect it. So they can't just take Malachi Starks and these safeties and drop them back and take away the big play. Now, I'll say this. I'm not confident enough yet in Caden Proctor and the tackles for Alabama in general, Elijah Pritchett and Caden Proctor, that I feel just so good that they can line up for 4 quarters and block. I'm assuming Michael Williams is going to play in this game. Kirby said he's hopeful that he's going to go. I think we both agree if that dude can walk, he's going to play in this one. And overall, the Georgia pass rushers in general, they've got some dudes, man, at pass rusher. This is not the same Georgia team on the defensive line, though, that had those monsters that we saw a few years ago with Jalen Carter and another big boy that they had there on the D-line. That's not the same D-line. But they've got some legit pass rushers that can get after the quarterback, and we saw that week 1 against Cade Klubnik and Clemson. They were in the backfield constantly. Michael Williams didn't play against Kentucky, but they still had dudes that were coming off the edge and getting after the quarterback. Linebackers, too, so fast, physical, what we're used to at Georgia. But it's not the same defensive line that we're used to. So I'm going to ask you, Tyler, do you think that Alabama can have success? Because the strength of this team was supposed to be running the football with Justice Haynes and Jam Miller and this offensive line who is now finally healthy, who look good against, albeit Wisconsin. This ain't Wisconsin. It's the Dogs. Do you think they can have any success in the run game against this Georgia D?
I do, yeah. Big fans of Jam Miller and Justice Haynes, and I think, you sprinkle in a couple of runs there with Milroe. I think that they're going to have to run off tackle. I don't think, Parker Brailsford's a good center, but this is going to be, I know they played, he blocked against Texas last year in that Sugar Bowl, went against Byron Murphy, Devondre Sweat. So those guys were pretty solid, but they're going to have more success, I think, running off tackle, which is crazy to say because usually you run east to west against an SEC team like Georgia. You're not getting much because of the speed. But I think that the RPOs that they're going to provide for Jalen Milroe are going to be solid, and I think out of those, they're going to be able to take some deep shots.
Yeah, and it's a different type. It's obviously we know it's a different system with the Kalen DeBoer system and stuff here. But what I've been really impressed with is he talked about in the offseason that Alabama was going to play to their strengths, and they have. They've ran Milroe to death, which they should do. They should utilize that as a strength. But I'm just wondering, man, against this Georgia team, they've got incredible linebackers. Georgia always does, and they do again this year. They're like freaking aliens, man. They run faster than most teams' DBs, and they will pop you. So I do think that they've got linebackers that can negate a little bit Milroe's ability as far as him running the football. What I'm most intrigued to see is because this isn't the same Georgia defensive line that we're used to seeing with them, just dominant dudes up front that just live in the backfield on the interior part of the D-line, can Alabama have success in the run game against them? The other part of this, with both teams, I think you're going to see some explosive plays for Georgia and for Alabama because everybody loves to talk about the inexperience that Alabama has in its defensive secondary. I mean, Keon Sabbs played a lot of football at Michigan. Damani Jackson played a lot of football at USC. They do have a couple of freshmen there. Malachi Moore's played more football than most of us have forgotten overall. I mean, Georgia's got a couple of freshmen that are playing in the secondary as well. I mean, they got Malachi Starks, probably the best defensive back maybe in the entire country, that's playing in the secondary for them. He scares the piss out of me as far as him roaming that secondary there on some of the shot plays that Alabama probably are going to be trying to take, because we know he loves to take the football away. But I think both of these teams have the ability with their wide receivers, with their ability to throw the ball down the field, if their offensive lines can give them time. It's just strange going into this game, man, that like we're used to seeing both of these teams just being so dominant on both sides of the line of scrimmage. Like I said, the last couple of years, Alabama with their pass rush has been a problem for Georgia. I think Georgia could be a problem for Alabama in this game with their pass rush. I do think that Alabama's strength of their defense so far this year has been their defensive line, and I think that they're going to be able to get pressure on Carson Beck. Carson Beck's a dude, man. He's as good as it gets in college football. Probably going to be the top quarterback taken in the NFL draft. But we saw against Kentucky, we saw against Alabama in this matchup last year. He's just like most other, and this is not a knock on him. I mean, dude, every pocket passer in football, the kryptonite for them, even Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, all of them. If you can get pressure up front right in their face, they become human real quick. Beck's the same way. Kentucky got pressure all night long with their D-line right in his face, and he just didn't look as good. Bama did the same thing last year in the SEC championship game. So that's the key for Alabama, because if Beck has time, I fully believe that the Georgia wide receivers can get open in the Alabama secondary. I just do. Do you agree?
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, Tate Ratledge is not playing in this game, so that's going to hurt Georgia a little bit.
Yeah.
I think that their wide receivers can make some plays. I think that the Alabama secondary, those safeties can only cover up, the kind of the warts on the cornerbacks for so long. I mean, the safeties are just so much more experienced than the cornerbacks there. I know Damani Jackson is a veteran. And,
he's played really well. He's played really PFF.
Yeah.
Dude, PFF came out with a thing that he's been like the top cornerback, I mean, in the country as far as like yards per like whatever and catches he's given up on the year. Now, granted, here's the thing. Usually I like to talk about, you've heard me a lot on these shows. Like I'll talk about like so-and-so's rank this and rush D versus this, and like I try to pick strengths and weaknesses as far as pass D, rush D, all that stuff. To throw all of that out the window. The teams that they've played so far, because dude, normally we see these two teams play 13th game of the year. It's so weird that we see them playing 4th game of the year, and no teams that either. I know Clemson's a solid football team, but like, let's just be real. Like right now, I just don't think Clemson or Kentucky or anything like that. That's not Alabama. And the teams that Alabama played are definitely not like Georgia, the players that they've got. And we haven't seen, when Tyler Van Dyke went out against Wisconsin, we knew then that we weren't going to be able to see Alabama secondary get tested. And me, as a fan, I wanted to see it. I wanted to see Alabama secondary, how they would react against a quarterback with a pulse. Because so far they haven't seen that yet. They will see that with Beck. I think that Alabama has a little bit of a better chance to get some success in the run game than Georgia does. Do you agree or disagree with that?
Man, I don't know. Like, you just never know when Etienne's going to pop one. I think he's probably one of the most dangerous running backs they've had in a long time. But
and Frazier,
I mean, Georgia's defense,
Frazier too, by the way. Both of them can hit home runs.
Frazier,
if they find a seam, they can both take it to the house.
Yeah, and I think they'll use them a lot in the passing game, and I think they'll try to get Beck some quick hitters at first to kind of quiet down the crowd a little bit. Because, again, the crowd, I think, is going to play a big factor in this. Obviously, I mean, Alabama runs for 4 yards, 3 or 4 yards, like the crowd's going to cheer that versus like any, against Western Kentucky, you run for 3 or 4 yards. It's like, oh, cool. Like should have had 10, but 3 or 4 yards against Georgia is a more monumental task. And so it's going to get the guys amped up. We're going to get the offensive line amped up and everything. But Georgia's defense, I mean, again, that Kentucky game, we kind of watched that as a whole, but their defense as a whole hasn't allowed anybody in the end zone yet.
Right.
It's just been field goals.
Yep.
And I know that Clemson's offense wasn't humming. I'd be interested to see Georgia play Clemson like now as Clemson's offense is kind of rolling. And obviously they played Tennessee Tech or whoever. And then, so they haven't allowed anybody in the end zone, which is pretty darn impressive, no matter how you slice it. But
yeah, that defense is, dude, nasty. Again,
yeah.
They always are. They always are. Another thing,
it's Kalen DeBoer versus Kirby Smart.
Yep, that's where I was going, man. I don't mean to cut you off, but I am the coaching part of this is the biggest question mark of anything because Alabama's got a bunch of the people that are throwing out me, I love to talk about revenge. I love to talk about the emotion part. When 18 to 22, 23-year-olds are playing a sport, the emotion factor in that is a big deal. You see flat spots, you see high spots, whatever, across college football. I just, again, think you throw that out in this specific matchup. Like I know a lot of people are hitting on that Georgia's in revenge and they dropped him from number 1 in the poll after the Kentucky game. They've been listening to the last 2 weeks about question marks about them. Don't forget, an entire offseason, people acted like this Alabama team was not going to be the same Alabama without Nick Saban. You got a lot of coaches and a lot of players that had a major chip on their shoulder coming into this season. When these two teams lock up, you've got the Iron Bowl, you've got Ohio State, Michigan, you've got these your big normal rivalries that you have every single year. Those all have a completely its own unique feel to it. This game is the same way. I've witnessed this game many times in person, some of the biggest that they've had. And this game itself is just completely different from one another. That's why you throw excuse my French, we throw all that shit out. It's two of the best just locking up, man. And I'm interested to see as far as the coaches are concerned. Nick Sheridan. He hasn't been an offensive coordinator a ton in college football. And he's calling plays against a Kirby Smart, Glenn Schumann, that crew of Georgia defense. I know Kalen DeBoer is also very involved. I get that. But still, Nick Sheridan's also sitting there calling plays against Georgia. Kane Womack, I think a lot of them love him. You know me, I would literally, if Kane Womack said, Lance, run through that wall in your house right there, I would say, yes, sir, and run straight through it. Love the guy. Think that there's a lot of very good coaches on this Alabama staff, but dude, there are a bunch of young coaches that came from Buffalo and South Alabama and that were a tight ends coach at Washington and all this stuff that are now on the biggest of the big, dude, doesn't get any bigger than this, stages, going against the Dogs. I'm interested to see how that bunch calls a game because we know how this is going to go, man. Georgia's going to hit you in the mouth. They are. They're going to hit Alabama right in the mouth. How do they react? How do these coaches react when they call a bad play and Milroe throws a pick? It's going to happen. Probably both teams are going to have that kind of stuff happen.
Yeah.
That's
me. I love Kalen DeBoer. Mm-hmm. Been a big Kalen DeBoer fan for a long time. Mm-hmm. I have no doubt he's going to have these guys prepared. He's going to have a solid game plan. It's whether or not they can execute it. Mm-hmm. And like you mentioned, everyone kind of, said they didn't really write Alabama off, but they said it's not going to be the same team as it was with Nick Saban. And to this point, those 3 results they've had, they would have been the same with Nick Saban. So this game's going to tell us a lot, right, about what this Alabama team is made of. And if it really is, because you can be a 2-point underdog or whatever. They're going into it as we're at home, we're defending our home field advantage, and we should win this game. No doubt about it. That's what their mindset is.
Yep.
And you can talk about the revenge angle from Kirby, but dude's been seeking revenge for how many years now? He won the national title, but He's 1-5 against them, and Alabama's been underdogs 3 straight times against, maybe 4 straight times against Georgia, and they've won 2 of those at least, and maybe 3. So it's nothing new for them to be underdogs to Georgia. So I just think, I mean, you know me, I love the Nuggets, right? I'm Mr. Nuggets over here. So top 5 home dogs are just, in the last 30 years, it doesn't happen often, right? Top 5 home dogs, 7-9 against the spread, and 4-12 straight up.
Yeah, because
so not a good sign if you're a home dog here. You're not going to like a lot of these, I don't think.
No, that's okay, man. I get it. Like, it makes sense. That actually does make sense, because if Vegas is making a top 5 team a home dog, they feel pretty certain that other team is better.
Yeah,
that's what they feel. That's what they feel. And again, all the disrespect card they want to play right now that everybody, the national media, keeps talking about, that's going towards Georgia. Georgia's favored. That's what I'm saying, man. I just don't think I just don't think any of that matters. Not one bit. I am not scared one bit of the part of that, well, Georgia's just extra motivated in this game. Dude, none of that matters when that ball kicks, dude. Not a single bit of it. You don't think Alabama's motivated to play against Georgia?
Yeah.
Like, come on. Sorry, do you got more Nuggets?
I got one more, including the postseason, and this is including games against Alabama. Kirby Smart's 31-16 against the spread against ranked opponents. 25-12 is favorites, and we just know, 2 or 3 of those are losses to Alabama. So, among about 500 coaches in Action Network's database, nobody's been more profitable against ranked opponents. And I do think that after the Kentucky game and the result that they got, that was probably the best thing for Georgia. And Kirby's been in that locker room for 2 weeks straight, saying that the media thinks you're going to go 6-6 this year, 7-5. And he's doing everything he can to motivate these guys to come out.
And those idiots will actually believe him.
They will, because he's pretty darn convincing, man. He's pretty darn convincing. So for me, I think I told you today, I'm not going to bet this game. I'm just going to watch it just for the pure enjoyment of college football, because I've been going back and forth, and 1 minute I'm thinking, man, like you said, Alabama, like, they're playing at home. I love Kalen DeBoer. I think they get it done. They've gotten it done against Georgia teams in the past. On the other hand, I think Kirby is the master motivator. I think he can get these guys fired up. I think they are seeking revenge for last year in the SEC championship game. And then I go back on Alabama, and then I go back on Georgia. I'm just flip-flopping. I don't see a lot of really glaring edges either way, so I think it's going to be an evenly played football game. And for that reason, I'm just going to stay away. But I think if you forced me to make a pick on who was going to win this game, I'm about to roll with the Tide.
I'm proud of you, man. I'm proud of you. And
I know which way you're rolling to.
Yeah, but we'll get to that here in a second. So Kane Womack the other day in his interview, defensive coordinator for Alabama, I agree 1,000% with him. You just said it. I do think that these two teams are very evenly matched. Which team can force the other team to make mistakes? Like in that SEC championship game last year, they forced a pick 6 in a very crucial situation against Carson Beck. So on Georgia's side, the path to victory for Georgia, if they can protect Beck and give him time, I do think that they can get open in the Alabama secondary, and they can hit some plays, and it could be a long night for Alabama if that happens. I think Alabama's good enough on the defensive line to get pressure. I don't know about Georgia's offensive line enough yet to say, can they block Alabama all night for 4 quarters? But that really is the recipe for Georgia. It seems pretty simple, but it is. If they can protect Beck, give him the time, I think the weakness for this Alabama team is their secondary. I think the path to victory for Alabama, they have to hit the shot plays. You're going to get a few opportunities. There's not many that you get against Georgia. There's just not. I think they have to hit them. I know they didn't necessarily do that in the SEC championship game. Again, in the SEC championship game last year, it was just methodical. It was winning the game at the line of scrimmage. I think they have to hit some shot plays in this game to win. So when they get their opportunities, because they will present themselves a couple of times, can they hit them? I just think that's the path to victory. And for Alabama to get pressure on Beck, they've got to get pressure on Beck. So I am, of course, I'm going to say it. I think Alabama wins this game at home. I think it's a freaking war. It's going to be a classic. And I think it's probably played in the 20s. Both teams in the 20s is where I think this game is played. I think that there's just so much talent on the defensive side of the ball for both of these teams for it to turn into just a major shootout. There would have to be just so many explosive plays hit for it to turn into a shootout. And I just don't see these great defensive staffs and these two defensive lines allowing that to happen. I do think both teams' defensive lines in the pass rush game can keep that from happening. I wouldn't be a bit surprised to see multiple sacks for both of these teams because I do think they've got the goods at getting after the quarterback. But I think Alabama wins this game, and the score I've got is I've got Alabama 27, Georgia 24 in this game. It's going to be a war.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah.
So same score as last year.
Yeah.
All right, look at us, man. Only 25 minutes on the game. Not bad. Not bad.
Not bad at all.
Let's move on to my backyard, Louisville at Notre Dame, 3:30. It's a Peacock-only game. Like I mentioned on the Monday's episode, Peacock getting this game and then the Ohio State game, streaming only. This is basically an elimination game for Notre Dame, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
They lose this game, there's no hope of going to the playoffs. So
I agree.
They come in the game as 6.5-point favorites right now. Don't
you find that interesting? That line
that they're favored by 6.5.
Yeah.
It means Vegas really thinks highly of Notre Dame, and they're power rated very highly. And Notre Dame, I think this year more than ever, nobody really knows what to think about them. Like they don't know where to slot them, don't know where to rank them. They're either overrated or underrated all the time, right? So I mean, people just don't know where to slot Notre Dame and which team's going to show up. Is it the team who's struggled with the MAC opponents, or is it the team who smashed a Big Ten opponent and won on the road at A&M? I just don't know. But for Notre Dame to win this game, their offense is going to have to throw the ball at some point. It's almost akin to Michigan, where, again, if you put Michigan and Notre Dame on a neutral field right now, I'd probably favor Notre Dame by a little bit because their offense is slightly better right now than Michigan because they can actually complete a forward pass. But Riley Leonard's got to throw the ball. Like he has to, the ball has to come out and he's got to take some deep shots. He hasn't, I can't remember a deep shot he's taken all year. And if he doesn't take the deep shots, then the running game's not going to be there successfully. And if you're talking about a Louisville team who ranks opponent adjusted second in the nation at stopping the run. And that's what Notre Dame does best. They've got Jeremiah Love, who's probably the best player on their offense, and Jadarian Price. And those guys are studs in the backfield. And Riley Leonard can use his legs too. But man, when he gets open receivers, he's got to just release the ball because when his first read's not there, he just takes off and runs. And that's where he puts himself in harm's way, gets injured. And it's just, it can only last for so long. On the defensive side, I mean, Notre Dame is going to take care of the game on the defensive side of the ball. Tyler Shuck is a good quarterback for Louisville. He's had his injuries in the past. When he plays, he's really good. So it's going to be a test for them. I mean, Louisville's a fast team. They always are a fast team, especially under Jeff Brom. And again, you talk revenge angle, and you've talked about it all week when we talked about Notre Dame, is the revenge angle from last year. Notre Dame, they had that Ohio State game, and then the next week they went to Duke, and they had a really close game with Duke down to the wire. And then again, back on the road the next week at Louisville, and it was just lights out. I mean, Louisville's crowd was into it. It was a crazy atmosphere that night, and they just hit them from all angles. And Notre Dame just mentally, physically, everything, they couldn't keep up with them that night. And so
it wasn't that wild, but isn't that wild, dude? Like how, again, we talk about the emotions of college football.
Yeah.
We saw Notre Dame coming off those two huge close games, and they went on the road to Louisville, lost. Everybody after that was riding Louisville really high. You and I put Louisville on upset alert the next week at Pitt. We had some Louisville fans that acted like we were idiots.
Yep.
And Pitt just beat him straight up. Didn't even have to cover the spread, just beat him straight up at Pitt. So, yeah, just interesting how that happens, man.
Momentum in college sports is just an unbelievable thing.
It is.
And, I mean, but you got to, I mean, Notre Dame's got 6 or 7 sixth-year and fifth and sixth-year guys on the defensive side of the ball. And so they remember that game from last year, just Louisville running all over them and hitting those shot plays and everything. So you got to know they're going to be fired up for this.
But to me, it's which quarterback can throw the foot. Like I mean, again, I know you know more way about your feel for obviously Notre Dame's win more than me on this one. But I mean, let me ask you this: do you think who's the better quarterback in this matchup?
Oh man, I honestly don't know. I mean, overall quarterback might be Leonard. Passer is obviously Shuck.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the most simplest answer I can give.
Yeah, I just don't think. I think you would probably agree with me on this. I don't think either one of these teams are just going to allow the other one just to run left, run right, and just run off tackle and have a bunch of success. Somebody may.
I mean, Notre Dame's offensive line is still just. I mean, that Purdue game.
Oh yeah, they
won by 59, but they lost 2 guys. I mean, Ashton Craig's out. I mean, they just again, and some of those guys they lost were the younger, less experienced guys, but they were more talented. That Marcus Freeman said they were going to play. So now they get to bring in, and that's the benefit of having more experienced guys. They get to bring in some more experienced guys, but you know all along that Notre Dame didn't think those guys were better. So they got to come up with some scheme. Denbrock's got to show some stuff. Riley Leonard's got to show some stuff. The wide receivers got to make some plays. That's really what it comes down to is can Riley Leonard be effective throwing the ball? Yeah.
And we know Notre Dame secondary is really good, and they're going to have to be. Ja'Cory Brooks for Louisville has been really good. The transfer from Alabama has been really good so far for Louisville. We know Braun can scheme some guys open, but dude, I just think that this game is as simple as which quarterback can make some throws. Because I just don't think that which quarterback can make throws and which defense can force a couple of takeaways. And the only thing with the line on this one is I feel like it should be less than what it is. But just like old Doug Barton tells me all the time, that line's where it's at for a reason. And that's what scares me as far as because, like, my brain tells me, I mean, I just don't think Notre Dame should be favored by 6.5 or close to a touchdown over Louisville. I think this is a 3 or 4 point game either way.
And Notre Dame's the lower ranked team.
Right. And
there's a bear bite for
the
you.
fact, I know Notre Dame's got a huge following and all that kind of stuff, but I expected this line, truthfully, I expected this line to fall throughout the week. And as we sit here on Wednesday night, sitting here recording this, it's been 6.5 all week.
Yeah.
And I would imagine your underdog players, we'll get to it here in a little bit in the upset alert. There's not a lot of just dogs out there this week, I feel like, that are just super popular like last week. There's a lot of dogs last week that were barking. This week, there's not a lot of dogs out there that I think are barking. And so you got to think that for the underdog bettors that are out there probably pounding some Louisville, because there's a lot of people out there that just hate Notre Dame. There's a lot of people out there that don't think Notre Dame is any good. They think that they're overrated, blah, 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 all that stuff. And yet the line's still sitting there at 6.5. That's interesting to me. I personally still look at this game and think it's going to be a war. It's going to be a close game. I tried my best all week because I love the revenge factor in college football. I tried my best to get there to take Notre Dame. And as we see here on Wednesday night, I can't do it as of right now. But I think this is going to be a war. And again, we don't chicken out here on this show. We make picks even when we can't give out like bets. It's not a best bet. I think Notre Dame finds a way to get this win. I think they find a way to get it done. I think it's a close game. I think Jeff Brom and Louisville are a good football team, and this is going to be a war. And I think Notre Dame gets it done in a close, lower-scoring game.
Yeah, I am worried about big game Brom a little bit, but I do think the Notre Dame defense will treat this similar to the A&M game, and I think that Connor Wigman threw a couple of bad interceptions that game. Notre Dame took advantage of them,
Yeah.
so I think they can put some pressure on Shock and create some turnovers there. But
last question, last question on this, Tyler Shuck. I know we don't have it in front of us, but I'll be willing to bet this is the best defense he's faced in his career because he's been so injured. He was at Oregon, he got injured.
Mm-hmm.
He was at Texas Tech, he got injured. I think this is the best defense he's faced in his college career.
Yep, should be interesting. Mm-hmm. Noon on ESPN, Oklahoma State, who lost last week at home to Utah. This is on the road at Kansas State, who lost last week on the road to BYU. And the last time these two teams clashed in the Little Apple, Kansas State walked away with a 48-0 victory. The Wildcats, they bounced back almost better than anybody. Definitely better than the Cowboys. 14-6 against the spread after a loss, and 18-8 against the spread after a loss as a home favorite. So, Chris Kleiman versus Mike Gundy, Avery Johnson versus Alan Bowman. You've still got no idea if Ollie Gordon's on the field or not for Oklahoma State. Again, the only thing that worries me in this game, on Monday, I did take Kansas State minus 4.5. The only thing that worries me about that is the fact that this season for Oklahoma State, it hasn't been Ollie Gordon winning games and putting up yards. It's been Alan Bowman, and their passing offense has been pretty solid. And we've said Kansas State's pass defense leaves a lot to be desired. I know they kind of shut down the Fafita McMillan show, but that was really all Arizona had that night. And so that's the only thing that worries me in this game. But I did roll with Kansas State minus 4.5 in this.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm on Kansas State minus 4.5 as well. That was one of my first bets of the week. As far as trends go, there's no reason to even look at it because Kleiman's really good at home against the spread. Like you said, Gundy's one of those that's really good as a dog against the spread. So both of those, you throw them out. I'm just trusting that going into the year, I felt like Oklahoma State was going to take a little bit of a step back. Didn't care that they had all that returning production or not. Just feel like that Kansas State, Utah, and a couple of those other, I like UCF as well in the Big 12, but Kansas State and Utah are the class of the Big 12 in my opinion. So I'm going to roll with what I believe and what I think on that. Alan Bowman was, we used the phrase that somebody was booty. Yeah, he was booty against Utah last week. And, the Kansas State game, we were both on BYU plus 7.5 last week. I almost sprinkled on the money line on it too. I wish I would have, but we were both on that last week. And I stayed up late and watched those Vampires late against Kansas State. And early in the game, I said the old famous saying, I'm on the wrong side of this one. Kansas State was I just felt like the dominant, was so much better than BYU. And then about a 4-minute stretch, 4 minutes on the clock itself. The last 2 minutes of the second quarter and the first 2 minutes of that third quarter were some of the strangest, wildest. It looked like Pac-12 after dark at the Palouse at Washington State or Reser Stadium in the fog and rain at Oregon State. Some weird stuff was happening in Provo. That punt returns and interceptions and all kinds of crazy stuff went down in those 4 minutes. Other than that, Kansas State looked like the better football team. So it's one of those.
Let me just tell you real quick. Let me tell you,
Yeah.
A 6-minute stretch after BYU kicked a field goal late in the first half to cut it to 6-3.
Mm-hmm.
The following occurred: there was a scoop and score touchdown, a short field touchdown drive after an interception, another short field touchdown drive after another interception, and a punt return touchdown. Just like that, 28 points. And all BYU had to show for it was 56 total yards of offense.
Right. Yeah. So, if Oklahoma State does that, yeah, sure, they win the game. There's nobody going to win games doing stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like having stuff like that happen against them. That's just, dude, very unfortunate, weird, crazy stuff. So that's what we talk about when we talk about Pick Six previews, when they give out the game grader type stuff. That is Kansas State. How teams lose games and how teams win games matter. They do. Kansas State, when they lost that game, I didn't think anything bad of them after the fact. I didn't walk away thinking that they sucked or BYU was so much better. I still think the same I think about Kansas State. I'm just not sure yet. Maybe we'll find out this week. I'm just not sure yet that Oklahoma State's what a lot of other people thought going into this year that they were going to be. I love the take that I heard on the Bears show that they have on Fox. One of the guys there that's out in the desert that I can't remember his name, sorry, that gives out actual lines for one of the biggest sports books in all of the country. He was talking about how all everybody talked about was how Oklahoma State had all these 6th and 7th year offensive linemen and how great, how experienced they were and all that kind of stuff. And he said, did anybody stop to think that maybe that's not a good thing? None of these guys are good enough to get drafted in their 6th and 7th year in college football? And I thought about it for a second. I said, it really is true. All of us talked about that in the offseason, how experienced that offensive line was. But maybe this is the game that they show up. I don't think it is. I'm with you on Kansas State, -4.5. I don't like playing against Gundy as a dog, but I'm fine with backing Chris Kleiman coming off a loss in Manhattan. I think they're the better football team. I think Avery Johnson and that run game, I think they get it done against Oak State. I think that their defense is good enough to get some stops. I don't think that they have the freaky, goofy, crazy stuff that happened against BYU happen in this game. So, yeah, I'm on with you. K-State -4. K-State -4.5.
Yeah, back in early August, I put out a top 12 offensive line units, and Oklahoma State was not on there. And whether that was an oversight or not, I'll keep that to myself. We'll just go ahead and claim it as they're not very good.
You just look smart. You just look smart.
Yeah. 30:30 on ABC, Oklahoma at Auburn. The Sooners have dropped their last 4 games against the spread dating back to 2017 after a straight-up home loss. So not great for Oklahoma. You can say the same thing about Auburn, though. They just lost at home to Arkansas, and it's a different story. The Tigers are 11-6 against the spread after a home loss since 2016. But Auburn hasn't won a game outright as a home underdog since 2019, losing 9 in a row. And I think 4 of those are probably to Alabama and Georgia. So you can't blame them on those two. But Oklahoma at Auburn, 2 teams struggling at the quarterback position right now. Michael Hawkins is going to start for the Sooners. I think if it were my guess, I'd probably say Hugh Freeze goes back to Peyton Thorne for this game.
I agree.
Right now, Auburn comes in at 2-point underdogs. The total right now is 45 or 45.5. If you listen to us on Monday, it was 47.5. Lance said to take it. It won't be there long. I waited a little bit, but I got him at under 46.5. I just think there's not going to be a lot of points scored unless we get some pick sixes and turnovers and crazy stuff, because that's all that Auburn seems to do right now is turn the ball over.
Yeah. I mean, I would love to sit here and say that Michael Hawkins getting his first start ever. It happens to be on the road, and Jordan Hare, that's a tough place to play. But, dude, they just keep losing games at home.
At home, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it is because I've been there many times and experienced it. It is a crazy atmosphere. But, dude, it's just here recently, I guess, it just seems like they're only stepping up and weirdly playing Alabama and Georgia really tough at home. And then they're losing to New Mexico State and losing to Cal and stuff like that. And losing to Arkansas. But they'll play Alabama and Georgia off their feet at home. I have no idea how to handicap this game and what to expect in this game. I do know that Oklahoma's defense is legit. I still think they're legit, even at the Tennessee game. That Oklahoma defense deserved so much better than what they were returned and given by their offense against Tennessee. Tennessee's defense had a lot to do with that, but still, the Oklahoma defense, I think you could even ask the biggest Tennessee fan, and they would tell you, man, Oklahoma defense, they're good. That's a good squad there. Yeah, and they are. They're legit on the defensive side of the ball. I think Auburn's defense has played well. They were not the problem last week against a Bobby Petrino-led offense against Arkansas. They played really well against them. It's just truly, did that stat that was given out about what Auburn is ranked in total offense on the year, and for those that don't know, total offense is just literally your total amount of yardage that you have in every game, your total yards. They're top 25 in the country. Weren't they top 10 in the country.
It was something crazy.
Yeah, they're like top 10, top whatever. It's top 25 for sure in the country in total yardage. But they're dead last in the country in turnovers on the year.
I mean, that's a good sign for 2025. Turnover regression.
Yeah. But
I mean, all they have to show for all those yards is 14 points in their two biggest games.
Right. Yeah. So they're dead last at turning the football over. You know who one of the best defenses is in the country at forcing turnovers? Oklahoma. And Brent Venables' defense at Oklahoma. So, I think you can count on there's going to be some turnovers in this game, I think, by both teams. I would imagine Michael Hawkins will probably, as a true freshman going on the road to Auburn, will probably turn the football over. I would imagine Auburn will turn the football over as well. It's just a matter of how catastrophic are these turnovers. The handicap on this is if Auburn does not turn the football over, I think they win the game. But have we seen anything yet that tells us that they're not going to turn their football over?
No.
So, again, we have to give a pick in this game. Oh, me, the walk-on red shirts guys are going to say, there's Lance Freeze at it again. I think somehow Auburn finds a way to win this game, man. I don't know how. I don't know any analysis that tells you anything. It's just, I think Auburn finds a way to win this game.
This is the type of game they win.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's Oklahoma's first road SEC game.
Yep.
It's Michael Hawkins, true freshman, first start, and it's on a road environment like this.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I mean, gun to head, I think I would probably take Auburn +2. I don't know if I take them outright, but give me Auburn +2. And
wow, you're on them too. Okay, I'm not your Auburn,
I mean,
but that's the way you would lean. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, crazy stuff happens. Like you said, they played Georgia and Alabama well, and Oklahoma fits in kind of like that blue blood type category, like a solid program, and it's not a Cal or New Mexico State or Arkansas or anyone like that. So I'm with you there, but let's get to some quick hitters here. Virginia Tech, Miami, 7:30 ESPN. Miami coming in as a 19.5 point favorite against the Hokies, who are 2-2 and in desperate need of something positive to go their way. I've seen a lot of people out there on Miami, but you said you know this team better than anybody.
Yeah, so this is just the type of game, man. Virginia Tech's just maddening, okay? That we've seen it for years. They lose to East Carolina. They'll lose to JMU when they were bad in FCS. You know, they'll lose to goofy teams. And then they'll go play somebody like this that they're completely inferior to, that they're outmatched completely. The underdog role in general, they somehow step up and play well in these situations. Find me somebody that says, man, I kind of like Virginia Tech this week against spread. You won't find them. Now, the flip side of that is this is as talented as a Miami team and as talented as a team that I think Virginia Tech has played against in general in a while. Like, I don't know that it's probably been since I don't even remember if Virginia Tech even played the Trevor Lawrence, like Clemson teams or not. I can't remember. But, like, this is the most talented team overall that they've played, and they've got an X factor in Cam Ward that if he plays well, it could get ugly real quick. But it would not shock me at all if the Hokies, and obviously I'm a fan, so I'm going to say this, but like I truly do think it would not shock me at all for Virginia Tech to step up and play Miami a little bit off their feet. I don't think that Virginia Tech can win this game. Miami's going to win, but that 19, 20, 20 and a half, I don't want any part of that, laying that many points yet with Miami. So if I had to pick in this game, I think Miami wins. It's not a best bet by any means at all, not even the slight. It's not even a lean. It just wouldn't shock me if Virginia Tech played them a little off their feet and got within that. Now I think it's up to 20, 20 and a half. I think they could get within the 20 points of that number, like 34-17, something like that. And Miami wins this game and never threatened, but that Virginia Tech plays hard, plays well, and somehow gets within the number.
In Happy Valley, fans are taking matters into their own hands and trying to create a whiteout for number 19 Illinois coming into
Good
town
for
versus
them.
number 9 Penn State. 7:30 on NBC. So you've got a second screen from the Georgia-Alabama game. This game should be on there, even though Penn State's favored by 18 in this game. And including the postseason, James Franklin is just a preposterous 71-43 against the spread as a favorite. And that includes a 43-24-2 record when laying double digits. So when Franklin is favored by a lot, that's where he shines. I mean, and everyone talks about, James Franklin's an overrated head coach. And again, Josh Pate says it. He's exactly the coach that he is expected to be. He wins every game and covers a lot of them against teams like Illinois and Minnesota and Michigan State. And he loses to Michigan and Ohio State. Mm-hmm. So he's exactly the rightly rated coach. So Illinois has been impressive, though, so far. Luke Altmaier's been impressive. They went on the road. Again, though, they're coming off a solid road win against Nebraska. And it's just you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Sorry, my computer was flashing at me.
No, you're good.
Solid road win. So Nebraska couldn't get it done against Illinois. So Illinois' defense are gonna have to step up against that Andy Kotelnicki Penn State.
Yep, and this is one of those again that the so-called sharps would tell you that not a lot of underdogs out there this week, but a trendy dog with fleas, whatever you want to call it, is Illinois by the public this week. What does that matter? I have no idea. I don't know if that matters at all. But the trendy public underdog is Illinois. And that line was at 17.5, and now it's at 19. So that tells you that the so-called sharps, and I don't know if they're worth a dang or not, so far this year they haven't been.
They're just as good as us.
Right. Exactly. And we tend to follow the sharps a lot, and we've, been biting the dust with them because of it. This has nothing to do, period, at all, sharps or anything like that. I was extremely impressed with Illinois. We both were. We talked about it in our last episode. Luke Altmaier, like I said, I would go to war with that guy. That defense in general against Nebraska stepped up, was making some plays, hard hitting. That's a solid football team there at Illinois. But this, even against Nebraska, this is a step up a little bit in class. It just is. Penn State is a legit top 10 or 12 team in the entire country. They are. Like power rated, everything. They're that. Talent, all of that. They are. And that's interesting, man, what you just said about the Penn State crowd trying to take things in their hands and have their own whiteout. Think about that. That's really not that hard to do. Like, everybody's got social media. Everybody's got whatever. Like, just tell everybody, freaking wear white. And
well, what Penn State has done is they've commercialized and marketed this whiteout, and they announce it every April or May. So this year they announced that it was going to be the Washington game. And, you just kind of expect Washington coming off a national championship appearance. Okay, sure. Newcomer to the Big Ten. Okay. But as it gets closer and, the season takes place, you realize that Washington game might not be as good as this Illinois game, and you got a ranked opponent coming into town. And so, I don't even think James Franklin could say anything, because in his press conference, he said, bring the whiteout energy. He couldn't even say, do a whiteout. I think it's just against the rules. If you try to go against what their declared whiteout is, don't do it. But the fans are trying to take it in their own hands. And so it should be interesting whether or not, they're going to be loud regardless. It's going to be a night game in Happy Valley, so those are always tough.
Yep. Before we move on, I could be wrong on this. I think Penn State wins, and I think they cover. I do. I think they win. I think they cover. I just think this is a step up in class for Illinois. I love Burt Bielema. I think Luke Altmaier's legit. I'm not taking anything away from them in that win they had against Nebraska. That was fantastic. But I think Penn State takes care of business in this game.
Yeah, that was a coin flip game too against Nebraska, and then the game against Kansas, who hasn't looked great. Mm-hmm. They were outgained in that game too, so they might be a little paper tiger here. Illinois. I know we picked up a couple new Illinois fans for the podcast, so they're not going to be too happy with us. But hey,
we don't hate Illinois. We just think Penn State's better in this game.
Yeah. A little G5 love here from my alma mater. This was looked at to be one of the best G5 games at the beginning of the season. Liberty at Appalachian State. Coming in as 3.5-point favorites. The Flames are 3:30 on ESPN Plus. Both these teams blew 17-0 leads to East Carolina, which probably says more about East Carolina than it does either one of these teams. This will mark only the second time that App State is a home underdog in the past 7 seasons. And the last time was in 2021, and they were 4.5-point underdog against Coastal Carolina, and they pulled off the old upset outright. So, again, we've been talking about App State and how they just have been looking awful and allowing 114 points in their last 2 games. It doesn't look great. And Liberty hasn't looked like world beaters either. I mean, they're 1-3 against the spread, and they had trouble with New Mexico State. They put away UTEP late, again, with the East Carolina stuff. So they haven't looked as good as they definitely miss CJ Daniels, who went off to LSU. They don't have a guy yet that Caden Salters found a connection with, but running game-wise, Quentin Cooley is a stud in the backfield, and they should be able to have some running success against App State.
I was just about to ask you. Obviously, I'm not as caught up on the Liberty Flames as you are and your alma mater there. What's Liberty's run game look like? Is it still nasty under Jamie Chadwell?
Yep. And they've got Quentin Cooley, and then they've got, Caden Salter can run the rock too. He ran for over 1,000 yards last year.
Right.
So.
Yeah. So this will be this will be the test of all tests of what we just talked about a couple of times on this episode in regards to the emotion week to week, how one game, 1 week really doesn't carry to the next in college football. It just doesn't. I told Tyler this on Thursday night of last week. Appalachian State looked as bad, and it was so shocking because Appy State everybody knows this. Appy State is one of those just really good, hard-nosed, hit you in the mouth type, like well-coached football teams.
There's some people even out there who had App State in their playoff brackets, projected playoff brackets.
I had them as my Group of 5 representative. Wrong. But, dude, they were unrecognizable last Thursday against South Alabama. I texted you and I said, Appy State, with my own eyeballs, Appy State's as bad as anything I've witnessed in a game. And they were. They couldn't stop the pass. They couldn't stop the run. They couldn't run. They couldn't pass. They couldn't stop getting penalties. There was nothing that they did any good at all in that game against South Alabama on their home field. 1 week later, here comes Liberty, and this will be the test of that theory of what 1 week to the next doesn't carry anything. Because if they are that team that I watched last week, Liberty going to clap them cheeks. If they're not, if they actually can step up, it'll be one of those things that you said a minute ago, the last time they were a home dog, that they step up and take care of business against Liberty.
That's not a phrase that they would use well at Liberty.
It's not, man. So. It's the Baptist University there. They wouldn't like that.
Let's move on. Noon on ABC, Kentucky at Ole Miss. Ole Miss finally playing a team with a pulse. They get a 17.5-point favorite here. Kentucky on the road. Mark Stoops is going to slow that game down. The total is 53 points. He's going to slow it down as well as he can. Very rarely do his road games go over. Just ask Georgia. I mean, I know they smoked him last year, but he just plays everybody to a slow death. And if he loses the game, he loses the game. But it's going to be on his terms, and it's going to be a low-scoring game.
Well, this is the first time that we can say this, that in these matchups that Ole Miss is bringing a defense to the party. They are. They're bringing a defense to this party. Usually in this matchup, I remember it was a couple of years ago, they played at Ole Miss, and Ole Miss ended up finding a way to win late.
Yeah, it was 22-19.
Yep, late in that game. And that was a completely physical mismatch in Kentucky's favor, but Ole Miss found a way to win. That's not going to be the case in this game as far as physicality is concerned. What I'm most excited to see in this game, I just don't think Kentucky's offense is good enough to really make me want to look at Ole Miss's defense to see if Ole Miss's defense is as good as what we all think it is. We know it's better. We knew that going into the year it was going to be better. There was no way it wasn't going to be better by scheme and the personnel alone. But what I want to see in this is I had Ole Miss ranked. I've been wrong on some things, really wrong on some things, but I've also been really right on a few things here. I had Ole Miss's offense touted as the number one offense in the entire country. So I'm interested to see what Ole Miss's offense looks against a really good defense with a really good defensive line. I want to see what Ole Miss's offensive line, how they handle the physicality of that defensive front of Kentucky, because that defensive front of Kentucky is real. Just ask Georgia. They are. They've got a guy on there that's going to be a top 15, 20, or even 10 pick in the middle of that defensive front for Kentucky. So I want to see how Ole Miss's D-line handles this game. 17.5 points is a lot. I'm not getting involved in this game at all right now on the betting front of it. But 17.5 is a boatload. So I understand this is another one. I've already had friends texting me this week, like give me that 17.5 with Kentucky. And when I start seeing stuff like that, that obviously gets my contrarian brain thinking man, so the general public's all over Kentucky in this spot, another dog with fleas. But I think Ole Miss wins this game. I have no idea what happens in the line, but I'll take Ole Miss in this game. I have no idea how far as the line is concerned.
Yeah. Big noon kickoff, Minnesota at Michigan. Speaking of defenses, Michigan comes in as 9-point favorites. The total is down to 36.5 in this game. It's just going to be an ugly one. It's going to be an ugly one to watch.
Yeah, well, you saw Iowa and Minnesota last. Let me ask you this. Is there more offense in the Iowa-Minnesota game last week than we'll see in this one?
Heck yeah. Iowa's gone over 4 times in a row this year.
Yeah.
I mean, they're 4-0 to the over. And I dabbled with the under last week. I thought, classic Iowa-Minnesota game, but Iowa put up 31 on them. So Iowa's offense is by far better.
Yeah, I mean, Kate McNamara is funny to say this because he transferred to Michigan. Kate McNamara is definitely a better quarterback as far as than Michigan has. So, I mean, I think, but really good tailbacks in this game for both teams. And both teams are good at stopping the run. So, I mean, Minnesota did give up some rush yards last week to Iowa, though. So, I mean, it's a 9-point line with a 30, what'd you say, 35, 36?
36.5.
36, good Lord, dude. I have no say in this game. If you made me pick a side, I think I would take the under because I just don't know how Minnesota, other than takeaways or maybe hitting a home run, how they're going to score against Michigan.
Yeah.
I just don't, I don't know how they're going to score. Now, I think they're good enough defensively, though, to hold Michigan a little bit. But I think this is exactly what you said it's going to be. Over under total, 20 passes total in the game for both teams combined. Seriously, if you had to take it, over under 20 passes.
I'd take over. I mean, Cali Manis, one of these teams is going to be trailing at the end.
Cali Manis is at Rutgers now, but
oh yeah, Brosmer.
Max Brosmer, bro. Come on now, our New Hampshire boy.
Golly, everyone switches teams so much these days. But
I know.
Yeah, I mean, it would be that's a good number to lay though, 20.5. I like that.
Yeah, but I agree. I think for Minnesota to be able to win the game, they're going to have to throw it a little bit. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I would probably take the over.
Yeah. Another noon game on FS1, BYU at Baylor. Road Dogs, off a win in which they were outgained by 100-plus yards, have hit at just a 37% clip against the spread historically. Doesn't bode well for BYU. Plus, they're playing in the sunlight. So they're coming into this game as 3.5-point dogs.
What do vampires not like, Tyler?
That's the sun, man.
The movie Blade. The movie Blade taught me that, and the Twilight series that I watched with my wife taught me that.
Yep. And this just looks like a Baylor, like a smash Baylor spot.
Yeah. So this is the best bet of mine. I'm just literally, this has nothing to do with, do I think Baylor's better than BYU or anything like that? I really don't know. I'm just going to trust Vegas that the unranked team is favored against a ranked team. And I know the Bear will give it out this week on X of what that is, but it's ridiculous of how successful the unranked team is against the ranked team. Also, BYU just had the biggest win they've had in the last 2 or 3 years at home at night against Kansas State. Now they got to go on the road. The game's not at night. It's during the day. I know you're not a big fan of Colorado, but still, Baylor was good enough to where they freaking should have won that game at night in Boulder against Colorado. So I'm just blindly going to take. I took it was one of my first bets of the week. I took Baylor minus 2.5 before. Now it's gone up to Baylor minus 3.5. So I took Baylor minus 2.5 this week. I just think Baylor gets it done at home at 11 a.m. It's an ugly one, but that's what I'm taking as a best bet.
Yep. 3:30 on ESPN at Jerry World, Arkansas at Texas A&M. The line, I think, is at 4.5 right now for A&M, so it's ticked down a little bit. Arkansas's got a quarterback that they're probably afraid to throw the ball with. They should probably just try to lean on the run game a little bit. They got Jaquindon Jackson, who looks like the best running back in the SEC, especially with a yards per carry and a yards per game standpoint. And then A&M, Connor Wigman still, they said he's going to be a game time decision for the entire season, which kind of seems crazy. And they got Marcel Reed back there now.
Yeah, again, this is another one. I have no idea how to handicap this game. I just don't, because there's going to be a lot of games that Arkansas plays in. It's hard to handicap them because if you get the good version of Taylor Green, they can play with a lot of teams. The good version of Taylor Green played for about 3 quarters against Oklahoma State, and he was so good. And he makes some freakish plays. But he also could make the dumbest plays you've ever seen. So which version of that do you get in this game? Can A&M's defensive line, who's got some dudes, and we already know they've got dudes on that D-line, can they hold up against Jaquindon Jackson in that defensive line? I'm sure Bobby Petrino, OC last year at Texas A&M, going against A&M or whatever, like I'm sure that's some interesting nuggets there in regards to going up against the squad he played against, he coached for last year. But I have no idea. Like, okay, again, we have to give a pick. We have to. Who are you taking? You taking A&M or Arkansas?
I would take Arkansas on the points.
Arkansas on the points?
Yep.
I think I would too.
Yeah.
I think I'd take the points in this game.
Another 3:30 kick on Fox. We just talked about him, Colorado at UCF. This was the big, tussle we had on Monday's episode with the guess spread, and I got him at 11.5 UCF, and I didn't want to ruin guess the spread, but I'll send a tip to my friend next time because now it's up to 14.5. If there's one thing that scares me in the game, it's the fact that UCF is ranked 134th out of 134 teams in sacks and 115th in tackles for loss. And if they do not get the pressure on Shedeur Sanders, he will light them up, and those receivers will light them up.
Mm-hmm.
I think that pretty much anybody can get pressure on Shedeur Sanders. It would take a miracle for UCF not to have at least 2 or 3 sacks in this game. And so I think that they're going to lean on their ground game too, and they're going to be able to run up and down the field against Colorado. So I think UCF, I think they're going to win this game, and I think they're going to cover.
Yeah, so you got them at 11.5. Now it's up to like 15 or something.
I still saw like 14. I would still take, if it's at 14, I would still take 14.
Yeah. So I am holding out on something here, but I think the total in this game is what's interesting. Obviously, we know there's a hurricane taking place right now on the Gulf Coast that's going to be hitting the state of Florida. There's some rain that's being called in the forecast right now, possibly for Saturday. Obviously, that favors UCF heavily because they just want to run the rock constantly. We know Colorado can't run the ball. They just want to sling it with Shedeur. So if the weather clears up a little bit, I might be on the over in this game. And I might take a look at UCF's team total. I think both these teams are going to score over 30. And I think UCF can get into the 40s with their pace of play that they play at and that Gus Malzahn type system. I don't think Colorado is going to be able to stop the run game, but I do think Colorado can have success offensively. And I think there could be a lot of points scored in this game. If somebody would have told me that the line was at 11.5, I'd have jumped in there with you. But at 14.5, 15, like that's the last thing I know before we recorded. That's what I last saw. I'm staying away currently from the line. It wouldn't shock me at all if UCF wins this game by 3 touchdowns plus. It would not. But it also wouldn't shock me if this is a 49-35 type game. Not one bit. But I think UCF wins the game. I just don't know yet as far as the line. But if it's decent weather, the total right now is around 63, 64. I would absolutely take the over in that game because I think both of them score in the 30s.
Last game we're going to talk about, a little Big 12 After Dark, 10:15 Eastern on ESPN, Arizona at Utah. A clip is circulating on social media of last year when it was 35-18. Arizona beaten up on a real beaten up Utah squad. I'm not even sure Bryson Barnes was quarterback at that time. They had guys injured on defense, and they were up at Arizona, and it was 35-18 with, I don't know, 40 seconds left.
42 seconds.
And
first down.
Jaden DeLora was actually in the game, and he throws a bomb to Tedero McMillan for a touchdown.
50-something
to
yard
make
bomb.
To make it 42-18. And you could see, he's just kind of smirking over there on the sidelines, and Kyle Whittingham looks less than thrilled. I'm not sure if any words were exchanged after that, but Kyle Whittingham's a classy guy. He probably just said good game and moved on. And Jed Fish tucked tail and ran off to Seattle, so he doesn't have to play Utah anymore. And, Whittingham's probably remembered that. Unfortunately, Fish isn't going to be there, but they're 11-point favorites in this game. Last time we saw Arizona against a ranked team on the road, it was Kansas State, and they did not look good because they're basically a two-man show right now. And
a booty run defense.
Yeah, Utah looked really good. And Utah, Micah Bernard looks real good.
Yeah, he does. We know the Utah defense is legit. We know the Utah run game's legit. We know the Arizona run defense. I just don't think that's something you just fix necessarily. I just think that's what you are. You can't stop the run for Arizona. I don't know how that you just all of a sudden just like, oh, we're just going to be so much better at stopping the run. Hey, it's Cam Rising. I'm just kidding. I don't care. Don't care at all. But, hey, you know what the big analysis on this game is? Did you see the color uniforms that Utah's rocking?
A blackout.
A blackout, man. That's worth at least 3 points. When the home team's doing a blackout, that's worth at least 3 points. Utah wins this game. I think Utah wins this game. I don't know yet. I haven't gotten there yet as far as going to back the spread or not. Right now it's at 11. But I like Utah to win this game. I do think that Whittingham and this Utah team have definitely had this one circled as far as how Arizona got all happy on Utah's ass last year in the desert. So, yeah, I like Utah to win this game. And I have no idea who's going to play quarterback, but I was impressed with Isaac Wilson last week on the road at Oak State and how well he handled that atmosphere and that big of a game, and how Andy Ludwood handled giving him good, easy throws and things like that, and he played well. So even if he plays, I still think Utah takes care of business in this game.
Yep. All right, it's time to sound the alarms. We're going to put some teams on upset alert, brought to you by SeatGeek. Tons of big games this weekend. Don't miss out on the action. If you're a first-time SeatGeek user, use promo code AlwaysTalkinBall for $20 off your first ticket purchase. Download the SeatGeek app now. Go to SeatGeek.com. Grab your seats. Get ready for the showdown. At checkout, type in AlwaysTalkinBall for $20 off of your purchase. You got any upset alerts? I know we were kind of toying around with it before the show, but did you land on anybody?
Dude, I'm really don't. I first week of the season, I was the first week or second week, I gave out an upset alert. No, I ended up betting on Penn State. Like when the game got around, I just gave out West Virginia against Penn State as an upset alert just because I was trying to find somebody that was more than a 4-point dog that had a chance to win at home. Or not win at home, just had a chance to win the game outright. Dude, I really don't. I'm not trying to chicken out. I just don't see anything on the board at all of a team over 4 points that's getting more than 4 points that I think can win the game outright. But I think you've got somebody, right?
I do.
You ain't scared.
Dig deep. I had to dig deep for this one. I am putting the New Mexico Lobos on upset alert. They are -9 against their in-state rivals in New Mexico State. And, I mean, a month ago, New Mexico was a 13.5-point underdog to Montana State.
Mm-hmm.
And I know they played them well, but now all of a sudden they're favored by 9 over their in-state rivals who have won 2 in a row against the Lobos, both as underdogs. And in fact, they've covered 4 in a row against New Mexico, has New Mexico State. New Mexico State a couple weeks ago, they played Liberty tough at home. They lost by 6 in that game. So Liberty's a much better team than New Mexico. And I think that they have a chance to win this outright. It's at New Mexico State. It's at home. They got a chance to win this outright. They for sure have a chance to cover that 9 points. So I know Jerry Kill's not there anymore. Diego Pavia's not there anymore. But still, it's a rivalry game. They're going to come out playing their best. So I dug deep for that one.
I like it.
So,
I like it, man. That's much better than me. It's much better than me just being a homer and being like, I'm going to put Miami on upset alert against Virginia Tech.
Yep.
So I just held that one off.
Right. All right, time for best bets. I already mentioned if you listen on Monday, I put out a handful of best bets. I had Army minus 12.5. I think you could still find 12.5 or 13 out there, which is a good bet in my opinion. Navy minus 2, it's up to 3.5 now. Air Force minus 3 against Wyoming, it's up to 4.
What a sharp.
Kansas State, what's that?
What a sharp, bro. Look at all these lines moving like that.
The closing line value king right here.
I'm telling you.
Kansas State minus 4.5, and I think it was at 4.5 today even, but now it's up to 5. I am on UCF minus 11.5, or minus 11.5. That's pretty well known. I mentioned earlier in the episode I'm on Oklahoma Auburn under 46.5 and UNLV. I've just added them today. I'm sure everyone knows the old Matthew Sluka news. Kind of opting out. We didn't talk about it a lot because we prefer to talk about the actual football being played on the field, and the offseason is for NIL and transfer portal and all that crap. It's a sad state of affairs when it's 3 days before Georgia, Alabama, and that's all anyone's ever talking about. So he opted out, though. He's using his red shirt. There's a big dispute on whether or not it's his fault or UNLV's fault. Well, before that, the line was UNLV minus 4 against Fresno State at home this week. And it dropped down all the way to plus 1.5, where I got it at. And simple fact is Matthew Sluka is not worth 5.5 points.
Mm-hmm.
And it's now back up to minus 2. So I took him at plus 1.5. I will be thinking about Louisville, unfortunately. If they're playing Notre Dame, I will be thinking about them. Plus 7 if it gets there, a full touchdown. Utah, if it gets to like 10.5, I know it's at 11 right now. I don't want to be too picky, but I like the Utah Utes in that game. And then IU against Maryland at home. This is kind of a Doug Barton special. He's just kind of like, how does IU not beat the crap out of Maryland this week? So they're 7-point favorites right now, 6.5, 7. So I'll be thinking about IU. But again, picks will go out on Saturday morning on X at AlwaysTalkBall.
Good stuff, man. Good stuff. I'm on KSate with you. I got them at minus 4 at minus 120. But for a fair line out there, the minus 4.5 was the line. But I bought the half point and took it at minus 120. So K-State minus 4.5. I'm going to go back to one of my favorite teams. I just, if Cincinnati goes on the road to Lubbock at night with those gorgeous all-black unis that Texas Tech's rocking at night and the tortillas are flying in Lubbock, it's only 2.5 when I got it. Texas Tech minus 2.5 at home against Cincinnati. Cincinnati's been one of those kind of surprise teams that's played good football this year. But still, I like backing Texas Tech at home, only laying 2.5. I had them last week, minus 3 against Arizona. Against Arizona State, sorry. They took care of business, and I like them again this week against Cincy. I am going to take a team here that I watched play, again, with my own eyeballs the last time they played, and they scored a touchdown on every single – not a touchdown, they scored on every single possession on the road against their rival in Reser Stadium at Oregon State. That's the Oregon Ducks. Their last outing, they got right, and then they had a bye week. So the struggles that they did have, I'm just going to trust that the coaching staff, the struggles that they did have in those games before Oregon State, they fixed those things in the bye week. They blasted Oregon State on the road. They're laying 24 in the Rose Bowl against UCLA. Again, there'll probably be about 5 UCLA fans in the stand, so there'll be like 0 home field advantage there. I like Oregon minus 24. I bet it at minus 20. Well, go ahead.
That line's actually up to 26 now.
Exactly. I took it at 24 earlier this week. And again, we're just sharps, bro. Took Baylor minus 2.5 this week. That's now up to 3.5. Do you think that the books are shaking, bro? We're giving
They're
out.
listening to Always Talking Ball like all you guys, and they're moving lines. We're moving lines out here.
Yeah. And the last one, I told you at the beginning of the episode, I didn't know if I was going to get there or not. Sipped a little bourbon, talked a little more ball with you. Dude, we're going to ride. We ride together, bro. I'll ride or die with you. I'm with you on UNLV. I'm with you. Let's ride with UNLV. All the stuff I've heard that the players for UNLV are fully in lockstep with this new quarterback that's going to be playing. And if you look at UNLV's games this year, The dude that transferred out of what was it, 43%, 44% completion percentage? They've been winning games with Barry Odom's defense. Is what they've been winning games with. I think they win this game with Barry Odom's defense again. I think the new quarterback that takes over is a dual threat type kid. I think they end up winning this game, take care of business. I was not lucky enough to get him at +1.5 like you did. I did get him, though, at -1. So UNLV -1. So recap here, Texas Tech -2.5, K-State -4.5, Oregon -24, Baylor -2.5, and UNLV -1.
I love it. All right. Settle in this weekend. Get some food on the smoker, get some food on the grill, maybe order some pizza if you want, get some drinks. We got a big one on Saturday night at 7:30. We got a lot of games at noon, a lot of games at 3:30. And then that one's kind of like the main event there. So we're all looking forward to that one. We've been looking forward to this one for a long time. Excited to watch it. And you know us, we'll be back on Monday with a full recap of that game. Hopefully some happy tears for our buddy Lance Barton after that game. So again, catch us on all the socials, Twitter, Instagram, catch us on Spotify. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe button, all that good stuff. And until next time. Dude, my